Oh wow! Pokemon Heart Gold! I plucked the shining game package from the torn wrapping paper. A grin stretched across my face. Though I'd already played Soul Silver a few months earlier, I was eager to start fresh and play as a different character with new Pokemon to control. Being used to a dark underwater atmosphere, I smiled a bit when I saw the pixelated Ho-Oh flying across the Heart Gold title screen, its wings sparkling on the sunlight. I began my game with name Gold. Original, I know. But as a reader of the Pokemon Adventures manga, I wanted to name the game characters after their comic counterparts. My rival was named Silver. After wishing my in-game mum goodbye, I began my virtual adventure with Cyndaquil as my starter. Though I've been playing these games since Red and Blue days, I've always experienced a thrill when each game starts. For this game, I'd already planned out about half my party. I knew what I really wanted was a Dragonite, so I caught a Dratini in the Dragon's Den on my Soul Silver version and traded it in. I named him Ryu, after the Japanese word for dragon. Although I never admitted it, Ryu was becoming my favourite. He was so strong and always rescued my other Pokemon in battle if they needed help. I raised all my Pokemon equally, but being a dragon type had its advantages. Every time I would turn around to talk to him, he would smile and greet me happily. I knew it was just a default greeting, but I felt attached to Ryu. He was my friend, my partner. After a while, I finally had a full party. Ryu, Quilava, Chinchou, Larvitar, Murkrow and Leafeon. No doubt most of these were traded in and hatched from eggs, but all of them were strong additions to my team. However, after months of training, I decided to put the game down. For what reason? I do not know. It's not like I abandoned it completely. I just lost interest temporarily. I tend to get into swings with video games, and once I received Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep for Christmas, I was ecstatic with my new PSP. For the most part, Heart Gold sat in my video game chest in my dorm room, but when the promotions for the newest GameStop giveaway started surfacing, I dug out Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Diamond, and was ready to go to the nearest store. Breathing out the frosty January air, I started up my car. I patted the game cartridges in my coat pocket just to make sure they were there. I was excited. Shiny legendaries? I'd wondered what they'd look like following my character around. I drove off to GameStop, daydreaming about the legendary dogs. I received the shiny Raikou, the promotion of the week, and happily took my prizes home. Even though I was excited after I saw the Pokemon following me, I didn't play with them again for a while. In fact, I didn't even notice that one of them was missing. One afternoon when I was eating lunch, my dad had walked into the room after being outside, shaking snow off his boots. "Is this yours?" he asked. I looked up from my lunch, eyeing the little rectangle he held in his gloved hand. Instantly, I shot out of my seat. "Pokemon Heart Gold!" "Where did you find this?" I demanded, taking my game from him. "I was out moving the car back and forth to clear a path," he explained, pointing to our backyard and parking pit. "When I got out, I saw something lodged in the snow." My blood ran cold. It must have fell out my coat pocket when I got back from GameStop. Did you run it over?" I inquired, afraid of the answer. "I must have," he sighed. "I mean, it was right in the car tracks." With my heart beating wildly, I ran up to my room and jammed the game into my DSi. I was expecting some glitchy mess. Surprisingly though, everything seemed normal. The title screen came on without any problems, and Ho-Oh greeted me with its usual cry. I pressed continue and looked at the screen. I was in the Poke Center, but it didn't seem quite like I remembered. I knew Heart Gold and Soul Silver improved graphics, but this place looked a little low tech. Everything was darker than usual and the color palette looked drained. Everything was either white, light blue, or grey. There were no NPCs in the Poke Center. All that was there was my characters and Ryu's sprite behind me, also Nurse Joy. My first priority was Ryu. Though he looked a little smaller than I remembered, I shoved the thought off as my memory being fuzzy. I turned around and tried to talk to him, but his sprite just shook, and not at all like when a Pokemon is angry. He was full on trembling, and he didn't stop when the text came up. What it said made my heart skip a beat. "Ryu is crushed." Crushed? I talk to my Pokemon regularly in the game, and I've never seen such a message. I tried again, Ryu is crushed. This time his cry came out, somehow lower than usual, and it cut off at the end. A little frightened, I decided to check my party next. I was shocked to find all my Pokemon fainted, except for Ryu. He was on his last health point. I quickly rushed over to Nurse Joy and tried talking to her. Surely she could heal my Pokemon, make sure they're fighting fit. He doesn't want to. I stare at the screen for a second. Who doesn't want to? He waited for you to come looking. He waited? He was crushed. They all were. After she finished talking, I opened the party menu again. This time, I looked closer at the Pokemon. Each sprite seemed to be condensed, and well, squished. Like someone took the top of the image and skewed it towards the bottom. Their animations were gone, and they had a grey appearance, almost as if they came out of the grayscale red and blue games. As I went down the list of Pokemon, each sprite became more and more twisted. Quilava's flames were gone, Murkrow's wings were twisted at awkward angles, Chinchou's lights were cracked and broken. The top of Larvitar's head was gone. Leafeon's leaves seemed to be dripping with a blackish liquid, and its eyes were empty sockets. But the last member of the party, the only one still standing, was by far the worst. Ryu's sprite looked like the material of nightmares. His sleek blue body was completely grey, and his once white belly seemed to be cut open, revealing a blackish liquid. This liquid leaked out and pooled around him. I almost missed the fins on his head. They were so pressed against his skewed head so hard, they almost disappeared. His head was lifted ever so slightly, and I noticed one eye was missing. Just an empty socket, much like Leafeon's. His remaining eye looked weary, sad, frightened, and so angry. I couldn't even believe I saw such raw emotions in a bunch of pixels, but it was as clear as day in the grey pupil. Ryu's sprite was still moving, but it did not bob like the usual animation. Instead, he weakly pushed his head to the ground and closed his eyes, revealing whitish tears streaming down his face. Horrified beyond belief, I closed the menu, but I didn't see the empty Pokemon Center from before. The NPCs were back, and the colours even seemed normal, except for the black bars that covered the top and bottom of the screen, almost like a movie set in widescreen. I'd never experienced this before in all my years with Pokemon. Shaking, I put the game down for a second and tried to concentrate on the outside world. However, Ryu's shrill cry came from the game once more, and repeated itself over and over again. I didn't even press anything, I pleaded with the game, tears blurring my vision. What's wrong with my game? I tried talking to Ryu again, to see if I had something to say. Ryu is cold. Well, it is January, I chuckled despite myself. The next text started without me pressing any buttons. Ryu says that you couldn't possibly understand. What? Was the game talking to me? I shook my head in disbelief. There was no way. Maybe I stayed up too late. Maybe I needed a nap. I laid down on my bed trying to ignore that damned ESI. Ryu was still squawking his cry, and I finally just grabbed the game. What? I screamed loudly, and saw the new text on screen. You left us in the cold. My thoughts instantly went to my dad moving the car. Was that what he was talking about? But there was no way. It was a game, right? You left us! This text made me jump a little, for it was a bit bigger than usual and it was in all caps. I didn't mean to, I tried to reason, tears threatening to spill down my cheeks again. Honestly, I didn't mean to leave you guys. Ryu's sprite kept shivering, and he kept emitting that horrible cry. You left me to die. I'm so cold. We were all crushed, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. The text exploded, scrolling faster than I ever thought was possible. Over and over, repeated countless times. My eyes couldn't follow them, and soon I grew dizzy. Before I could even blink, the words appeared on the screen in the same big letters before. Exclamation points claimed the end of the sentence, and the next batch of text scrolled quickly. It was cold. So cold. Why did you let him crush me? I loved you. I shook my head, crying freely now. I loved you too. I still do. I never meant to leave you guys there in the snow. But as soon as the last text faded, the widescreen-like bars on the screen stretched slowly towards the center of the screen. It was as if the game was closing in on itself. As if it was being crushed. One by one, the Poke Center was crumbling. Nurse Joy, the NPCs, the PC, they all disappeared into the darkness, one by one, until Ryu and I were the only ones left. Before the blackness swallowed us, the closing stopped. My sprite turned to Ryu by itself, and a text screen popped up. How do you like being? That was it. I expected more, but nothing appeared. And then darkness swallowed us. I didn't know what to do. For minutes I stared at the screen, half expecting Ryu to jump out the screen at me, but nothing happened. I set the game down and went downstairs. That night when I crawled into bed, I couldn't sleep. As I tossed and turned, I felt as if the blankets were swallowing me. Sweating and panting, I threw them off my bed and tried to sleep again. But a pounding headache struck me suddenly. The pain was unlike anything I felt before. It was as if someone was pushing on my head with a sledgehammer. I got out of bed and gulped down a few Tylenol. While I was out the room, the pain temporarily subsided. But as soon as I crossed my doorway, my head exploded with pain again. Frustrated, I tried to sleep again and closed my eyes. My head didn't stop throbbing, and my breathing came in short bursts. Ryu's cries were echoing cruelly in my head. Finally, I had to open my eyes again. My heart pounded with terror as I saw a message written on my ceiling in bold black lettering. Crushed? There once was a mother who had lost her child. His name had been Zach, and he was only 4 years old when he disappeared into Pinwheel Forest. His mother was distraught and searched for him day and night for nearly 20 years. Her husband had left her, claiming he couldn't live with a woman stuck in the past. He told her that he missed Zach just as much as she did, but they both needed to move on. He'd been missing for 20 years after all, and the man was lonely and sad. But the mother didn't pay any attention. She let him go without a word, only continued to stare out of the window of her small apartment in Castelia City. Her friends sometimes visited. They sat on the couch and watched her, sharing hushed words every so often. Many times they tried to draw her away from the window, but she would simply look at them, eyes glazed and far away, and say, "No, I'll stay here. Zach will be coming soon, and I don't want to miss him." Worried and defeated, the mother's friends would leave, promising to visit again soon. Then, one day, a tiny knock came at the door. The mother rose from her chair and went to answer it, fervently hoping it was her lost son returned from his playing in Pinwheel Forest. She opened the door and looked down on a small child. His hair was red, his skin was grey, and he had a small fluffy tail, but he looked like her dear lost Zach. The mother snatched the boy up, crying and scolding and laughing all at once. She had lost all concept of time long ago, and the fact that it had taken 20 years for her child to return and he was still very small didn't make any impact on her joy at seeing him. Her 4-year-old son had returned. The mother sat Zach on the couch and told him to wait there while she made him a sandwich. Then she watched him eat and watch cartoons with all the love in the world. The sun sank below the horizon, and the mother put Zach to bed, kissing him on top of his head and telling him to have the sweetest dreams. She turned out the light and went to her own bed for the first time in 20 years. She slept soundly and woke in a terrific mood, singing as she made breakfast for her darling child. She went to the dining room with a plate of scrambled eggs in hand, and Zach was waiting for her, a wide grin on his face. "Hello, my dear," she said cheerfully to him, setting down the plate. "Look, I've made you breakfast." Zach didn't say anything, but simply tilted his head to the side. The grin on his face stretched even wider, and his bushy tail flicked from side to side. Mischief flared in his green eyes. The mother's friends came by later and knocked on the door. When they didn't get an answer, they went to see what was wrong. One of the friends who was from New Town had brought a young daughter, a new trainer with 2 Pokemon and a Pokedex. She had been thinking that maybe her little girl could tell them other stories of her travels and cheer her up. They searched the entire apartment, but only found a small fox-like Pokemon. It was grey with red tufts of fur and green eyes. It smiled at them mischievously and yipped. Excited to see a new Pokemon, the young trainer knelt down in front of it and pulled out her Pokedex from her backpack. It buzzed, and an automatic voice began to speak. Zorua. It changes into the forms of others to surprise them. Apparently, it often transforms into a silent child. It had been an odd week for me. I ordered a game from Walmart and was waiting for it to come in. Sadly, it didn't arrive before I left for school, so I was left to go to school before it arrived. That Friday night, I was wondering why it hadn't arrived. Looking out the window, I didn't see any traffic, and my neighbours were already asleep. Not knowing that time had slipped from me, it was already 2:30 AM. I went to bed and decided in the morning I would go to Walmart and ask them about my item. I finally woke up at 11:30 AM and drove to Walmart. I went to the info section and asked if they'd recently received a request to ship Pokemon Y. They said they had no trace of it, and I was, well, confused. I said I'd come back tomorrow if it wasn't there yet. When I arrived, I played my Wii for a bit. About 10 minutes later, I got a knock on my door. I set my controller down and walked over to the door. I looked through the window. USP, it's finally here, I thought. But wait, why isn't it in the mail from FedEx? It is from Walmart, right? I then was too excited to be worrying about the delivery mix-ups and let him in. I paid him and he drove off. Anxious to get the game, confusingly in a huge box, I ripped it open. Yes, it's here. I had forgotten. I'd also ordered the Pokemon Y Legendary plushie, Yveltal. Setting it down, I grabbed my 3DS and popped it open. I grabbed the cartridge and popped it in. I clicked on the game and sat in anticipation. I started a new game and the game was awesome. I finished it in about 16 hours. I didn't put it down. Once I put it down finally, I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and played it again. I was going to catch Mewtwo. I went to the cave to catch him, and I wasn't able to. I didn't save, so I was stuck with him gone. When I tried to exit, Mewtwo appeared saying no more, and it said Delphox was released. I was confused. Every time I tried to exit, whether escape rope or walking out, one of my Pokemon would be released. Lucario was released, Fletchinder was released, and I eventually stopped trying to escape. I turned it off, and before I did, the text box said bye bye, and my save file was now renamed No More. It didn't stop with the game. I went to Walmart and thanked them for finally delivering the package, but they didn't recall shipping anything. What do you mean? We haven't shipped any packages recently. I looked at them questionably. What? But I got my Pokemon Y package a day ago. Sorry, but it must have been an anonymous shipper. I paused for a moment. But you delivered it. I know you did. I say as my visions begin to fade. And the last thing I see is people running frantically. I woke up in a facility, and I was strapped to a chair. You have been chosen, said a man's voice. We are conducting an experiment to change human beings into Pokemon. Pokemon that will help us take over the world. He left the room to get his assistant, and I was so skinny I slipped out. I jumped out the window, only hearing the screams of him yelling, I hate you! Come back here! I changed my address and had the police go on an investigation. They had yet to find who was doing this, but I really hoped they would. The next day, I looked at my window, and the man's body was hung on the side of my house, and written in blood on the window were the words, No More. The police were never able to identify the man. To cut a long intro short, I found a used copy of Soul Silver at my dear local GameStop. It was cheap, so I bought it with my own money and went home to play it. Usual scenario. When I started to play it though, my little sister kept annoying me, begging for me to let her play it too. I told her I would let her play it later, and she pouted as expected, but didn't argue anymore. I started the game up, and everything seemed fine and dandy. That is until the title screen visualized. It was solid black with the white words, "Love Lost." I was a bit disappointed that this was a hacked game, as I thought I really had gotten away with getting a cheap Pokemon game. Since I had it though, I thought I may as well play it, so I casually selected Start. When the game started up, it took me straight to the screen where you choose your trainer's gender. Instead of a trainer sprite though, there was an Espeon sprite for the male, and a Glaceon for the female. I thought for a bit and decided to choose the Espeon. When it asked me what I would like to name my trainer, I noticed there was only one suggested name, Love. I decided I may as well choose the name. The game started up, and who would have guessed that my trainer sprite was an Espeon. Instead of pink, he was dark grey and his eyes were black. The area I was in was an empty solid grey room. The header for the first area that tells you where you are stated "Home?" ? Since nothing was in there, I walked out the exit, which led me outside. The header for this place mentioned "Secluded." It was daytime and grassy outside, with Pokemon and houses scattered about. But there was a 1-tile wide grey path in front of me. I could only walk on this path, and if I tried to walk on the grass, it would act as if a wall was there and wouldn't allow me to. So, with these restrictions, I walked down the path watching other Pokemon and houses go by. Day turned into evening, which melted into night, that dawned into morning and brightened back into day, all in a few seconds. This cycle kept repeating for about a minute as trees started to replace the Pokemon and houses. Eventually, I walked through an invisible door, which was apparently in the middle of the path. I entered a small forest that was all shades of grey and black, titled Dead End? I was now able to freely roam the area, but there wasn't much for me to find. I couldn't go back through the entry I came in through, so I had to keep walking until I triggered an event. After a while, nothing happened, so I thought I may as well check out my Pokemon to see if I had any. When I looked, there was one male Espeon named Love, which I guessed represented the Espeon I was controlling. I selected him to see his stats. His sprite was grey with charcoal coloured eyes and a jewel on his forehead, just like his overworld sprite. His stats were all 1 and he had no moves, or anything else really, so I exited out. After a long time of aimless walking, I eventually found some sort of secret entrance behind one of the trees. It took me to a place that was all black except for a small lake in the middle. The header for this area enlightened with Cure. Curiously, I walked up to the lake and on the other side was a grey Glaceon. I went around the lake and talked to the Glaceon. It turned to me and a text box appeared. ... exclamation point? After a moment, the heart icons popped above both their heads. They both walked north into the darkness and stepped through an invisible doorway. They entered a forest, but this time they weren't grey anymore. They were back to their regular colours, as was the rest of and the day to night sequence started up again. The trees faded back to Pokemon and houses, and eventually they reached a house at the end of the path, with the time of day stopping at evening. Love turned to the Glaceon, and a sad icon appeared above both their heads. I entered the house, the Glaceon surprisingly not following. When I entered, it seemed like a normal one-room house. Its header read New, which confused me a little. I walked back outside and exited the house. I was surprised to see the landscape had changed. The terrain was rocky, sort of dark, and no other Pokemon or houses were in sight except my own. The header expressed reality. The 1-tile thick grey path was back, and Love's sprite colours were grey and black again. After I walked a few steps, I was a bit startled when the darkness suddenly faded and Pokemon along with all the other houses appeared. After a few more steps though, they disappeared again. This process continued until I made it to another invisible doorway. This time I entered a pitch black room. The header here informed Message. I headed east for a few steps to find a pixel-wide blue line cutting through the darkness. On the other side was a normal coloured Glaceon with a pair of dainty angel wings. Once I reached the wall, a text box appeared. Find me. Following which, the Glaceon disappeared. I turned north and encountered an invisible door yet again and entered another area. The header for this section was Dream. It was pitch black as the previous, except with a bit of fog. I walked forward a bit and found an Espeon amidst the fog. It was only an outline of the Pokemon and could be seen through. When I talked to it, a battle immediately started. On the opponent's side, the see-through Espeon's outline represented where the trainer sprite would have been. On my side, Love's grey sprite appeared. Love sent out Former. The see-through Espeon was apparently named Love, and sent out a normal coloured male Espeon named Love. I selected Fight, and was forced to use Struggle since he didn't have any moves. It knocked out the opposing Love in one hit. Apparently it didn't have much HP with Love's attack stat being only 1. Love sent out Becoming. Love sent out a solid black Espeon, with sickly green eyes and drool dripping from his mouth. He also had several holes in his body, as if someone had gone crazy with a cookie cutter and cut out several pieces of him. I selected Fight again, but Becoming was faster, as Love only had 1 in speed. Becoming used Haunt. The screen got darker and then it lit back up again. It didn't seem to do anything that affected Love, as he attacked with Struggle again and knocked Becoming out in 1 hit as he had with Former. Love sent out Haunt. Instead of sending out another Espeon, it sent out a Glaceon. Her sprite colours were normal, although slightly see-through. She also adorned a pair of feathery wings, with blood laced throughout them, mostly around the beginnings of where they protruded out of her back. I selected Fight again, but Haunt went first. Haunt used Corrupt. Everything went wavy and darkened a little. When light came back, Love's single HP point was knocked down to 0 and he fainted. Love appeared once again on the other side, but did nothing as the screen faded to black, disappearing back into the overworld. The see-through Espeon had disappeared now, so I continued to walk forward. Eventually, I reached a small lake, exactly like the one from before. On the other side was the angel-winged Glaceon from before. I walked around the lake and talked to it. Find me. The text box appeared and immediately afterwards the Glaceon disappeared. I continued to walk north and encountered yet another invisible door. I returned to the rocky terrain as before, except there was no Pokemon or house in sight. The header this time delivered Break Free. An Espeon with angel wings was standing by directly behind Love, so I turned and talked to it. Another battle started straight afterwards. On the opposing side was the angel-winged Espeon named Love, and on my side was my Love. Instead of calling out a Pokemon though, the angel-winged Espeon just stayed in place. I clicked Fight as all other options were useless. Yet again the offender made the first move. Love used Free. The screen turned solid white, then went back to normal. My Love fainted and the battle ended. Back at the overworld, Love's sprite had grown its own pair of angel wings and turned back to normal colour. I walked forward and for however many times that have been too many to count, passed through one last invisible door. I entered a solid white room, which declared Clarity as its header. I walked forward a bit and saw the Glaceon with angel wings in the midst of all the white and talked to it. Found. The text box appeared again, and the screen immediately cut to black and returned me to the title screen. I pressed start to find my previous save file had been deleted. I turned the game off and went to my little sister's room. I gave her the DS and let her play the game just as she requested earlier. She asked me what the game was like, and I responded with a mysterious, "You'll find out." She scowled at me and I smirked, knowing things like that get on her nerves. Apparently she had a different experience when she played the game, so I'm gonna let her make her own addition to this story. Alright, so I started the game and saw its title screen was solid black with white letters, Love Lost. I thought that was weird, but just kept playing the game. I clicked new game since my big sister's old save got deleted. I read her part of this story after I played, so I know what I'm talking about. But anyways, when I started, it took me right to the place where I choose my gender. I chose the female Glaceon since I didn't want a male Espeon. Pink doesn't look good on boys. There was one suggested name, Lost. I decided I may as well choose it. I couldn't think of any other names anyway. When it took me to the game, I was in the middle of a one-room house that was grey. The name for the place was Home? My Glaceon was grey and black, and I wondered why, but I thought it was neat that she got to be specially coloured. I walked out of the house and I was in the middle of a forest. The title thing for this place was Isolated. There was a one-space grey path and I was only able to walk on it. The game wouldn't let me walk anywhere else, so I walked down it for a while. And the time of day started changing. It would go from day to afternoon to night to morning, and kept repeating quickly. Eventually, I walked through some door I didn't even see that was on the path, and it took me to a grey and black forest that was called Dead End? I walked all around the forest, but absolutely nothing would happen. I got really bored after a while, but eventually I found a secret invisible door that led me to a place that was pure black and had nothing in it at all, except a little lake. This place was called Cure. I walked up to the lake and saw a grey Espeon on the other side. I walked over to it and talked to it. An ellipses exclamation mark appeared when I talked to the Espeon, and a cute heart icons popped up above their heads, although it did make me sort of sad that only lasted a second. They turned and walked up and went through an invisible doorway. They were in a normal forest, but they were back to their normal colours. The title for this place was Meaning. There was a white path big enough for both of them, and they started walking forward together. The trees at the edge of the path started to go away, and instead Pokemon and houses replaced them. The day to night thing started up again, and eventually they reached a house at the end of the path. They both turned to each other and had sad icons, and the Espeon entered the house, but Lost stayed behind. I went in after the Espeon. When I went through though, there was nobody in there. The title was empty, and it sure was right. I walked around but couldn't find anything, so I went back outside. When I went outside, Lost's fur was grey and black again, and I was in a forest titled Death, which sort of freaked me out. I walked forward. After about 5 steps, the screen flickered, like when your Pokemon has poison. I looked at my Pokemon, and there was a female Glaceon named Lost, and she had the poisoned effect. I exited out and kept walking, hoping to find a Pokemon Center. I walked for a long time though, and didn't find any place to heal at, and eventually Lost ran out of HP, and a text box appeared. Lost moved on. The screen went to black, and when it came back, Lost was standing in a place that was all white. She also had pretty angel wings. The title here said, Longing. I moved around in circles a bit, not quite sure what to do. I walked upwards and went through an invisible doorway. I was in a black room that had nothing in it. This area was oddly message, although all the other titles were weird anyways. I walked to the left to find a blue line in the middle of the place, and a grey Espeon on the other side. When I walked up to it, a text box appeared. Find me. Right after that, Lost disappeared, and I was in another black room. Except there was some fog. This place was Dream, which I suppose made a little more sense than the other one. I walked up a few steps, and then an outline of an Espeon popped up in front of me, then disappeared. I walked up a bit more and then reached a lake like the one where Lost first met that Espeon. The same grey and black Espeon was on the other side, and walked up to Lost and talked to her, and a text box appeared. Find me. The screen went to black, then faded back. My Glaceon was once again in the white room, and it was called Clarity, although I didn't really know what that meant. I walked around a few steps and eventually found an Espeon with angel wings. I talked to it, and another text box appeared. Found. The game then cut right to black and then went back to the title screen. So my playthrough wasn't as long as my sister's was, and it didn't save my game either. But I liked playing as the Glaceon, so it didn't matter much to me. Although I do wish there was more to this game, because after you play it the first time, it gets boring. I still liked it though. Although I don't really get what the story was about except that Glaceon and Espeon loved each other and something bad must have happened. My little sister apparently played the role of Glaceon, Lost, and her side of the story. I think this game and whatever message it may possibly hold may be translated in many different ways, so I'll leave your conclusions up to yourselves. Have you ever seen a Pokemon you want so bad that you'd do anything to get it? How far would you go to get it? Would you cross the line like I did? So, it was back when Black and White came out, and I was so excited for the new generation. I know some fans like to buy both versions of the game, but I usually just choose one based on the Pokemon on the cover. I picked White because I like the legendary. I've always liked black dragons. I only got to a point in the game where an NPC sent out a Gothorita. I loved this Pokemon straight away. I mean, just look at that gothic little Lolita standing in front of me. I wanted one so bad, but was so upset to find that I couldn't get it on White version. I considered going to the GTS to get one, but I like nicknaming and raising Pokemon myself. Plus, I didn't have all the gym badges yet, and I don't like using traded Pokemon before I get all the badges, and I wanted that Gothorita now. I decided to look online for a copy of Black version that I could buy. I surprisingly found a used copy for dirt cheap, so I ordered it. After a few days on wait, I got my game and started it up right away. I named my character Anna, as I always do, and just like on White, I picked Oshawott as my starter. For the first 3 gym battles, I was impatient, wondering when I could get my Gothorita. Then I finally ended up on Route 5, where I found the pre-evolution of Gothorita, Gothita. I caught a female one, naughty nature with a quick-tempered characteristic and the ability competitive. I named her Bellatrix after my favourite villain from Harry Potter, because I found it fitting. I trained her like mad until she evolved into Gothorita. She quickly became the main Pokemon on my team, joining Flipper my Samurott, Leopold my Leopard, Flamien my Simisear, Katoni my Whimsicott, and Peace my Tranquil. I liked my team, but Bellatrix was the queen. I had fun with her fake tears move in battle. I entered her in musicals and just enjoyed looking at her cute sprite and hearing that cheerful little noise she made. But then after one battle, she started to evolve. While I'm usually happy about my Pokemon evolving, I wasn't prepared to let my Bellatrix evolve. She was my favourite Pokemon, and I didn't know what she was going to evolve into, so I pressed B and cancelled her evolution. Bellatrix didn't evolve. She tried to evolve a few times on the way to the next town, as I didn't really switch her out much in battle and kept her at the front of my party, so she leveled up a lot. I pressed B every time. But I started to notice something strange happening every time I cancelled her evolution. The next time I cancelled her evolution, I got this message. Bellatrix didn't evolve. Bellatrix wants to evolve. And the next time I cancelled her evolution, Bellatrix didn't evolve. Why won't you let her evolve? It continued in this fashion until Bellatrix's sprite started to look sad somehow, and this text came up. I want to evolve. Please let me evolve. Why won't you let me? Please! I freaked out and shivered. This was really weird. I made it to the next city and saved and turned off my game. This was freaking me out. I'll play more tomorrow. The next day, I turned my game on and the first thing I did was take the Everstone I got from Roggenrola and gave it to Bellatrix. As the message Bellatrix was given the Everstone to hold came up, I thought I could hear a faint cry of a Gothorita. It sounded irritated, but it was so quiet that I dismissed it as my imagination. After that, everything seemed fine, and no weird messages came up this time. The only problems I had with Bellatrix holding the Everstone was her EVs being frozen and her not being able to hold a useful item in battle. But these were only minor problems. Everything was fine until I got to the Elite Four and challenged Caitlyn. She sent out a Gothitelle, the evolved form of Gothorita. At this point, something really unusual happened, and Bellatrix let out a Gothorita cry so loud that it hurt my ears. The text box underneath the screen said this. "This is what I could have been. This is what I was supposed to become. Why do you refuse to let me complete my evolution?" I stared in disbelief. This was insane. I couldn't help myself from saying out loud, but I just wanted a Gothorita. I just wanted to use my favourite Pokemon. To my surprise, I got a response in the text box. Well, I just want to evolve, and you won't let me. So I won't let you get what you want. What will Bellatrix do? Shaking, I pressed fight on the touchscreen. Bellatrix doesn't want to fight. I selected Pokemon. Bellatrix refuses to be switched out. I tried this a few times before getting annoyed and shouted, "Well, what the hell am I supposed to do?" After what felt like hours, this message popped up. Bellatrix wants to learn Fling. Should a move be forgotten? I clicked on Keep Old Moves, but was greeted with, Bellatrix wants to learn Fling. Should a move be forgotten? I realised that to move on, I'll have to teach her this move. As it was a dark attack move, I replaced Pursuit. I wasn't prepared to replace Fake Tears, Psychic or Future Sight. Bellatrix forgot Pursuit, and Bellatrix learned Fling. Bellatrix used Fling. Bellatrix flung a Everstone at Goth Hotel. After the battle, Bellatrix started evolving again. That was strange. I thought you'd get back the items you lose in battle besides the one-use items. I cancelled the evolution again. I knew I should have let her evolve, but after seeing Goth Hotel, I decided it didn't have the same charm as Gothorita, and I wanted to keep Bellatrix as my favourite Pokemon. I pressed B. Bellatrix's sprite appeared on screen. She looked angry. I mean really, really angry. This was an if looks could kill face. You still won't let me evolve? A pause. Then, fine. Have it your way. Sooner or later, you will let me evolve. I sighed and turned off the power. I'll have to do the Elite Four again, but this time I'll use Leopold against Caitlyn instead. But when I turned the power back on, while I was on Victory Road where I'd last saved, Bellatrix's sprite still had that if looks could kill expression on her face, and her cry sounded somewhat annoyed. She wasn't holding an Everstone, and her moves were Future Sight, Fake Tears, Psychic, and Fling. I got a horrible feeling in my stomach, but I carried on anyway. After leveling up again, Bellatrix still tried to evolve, and I cancelled again. But this time no weird messages came up. I found more Everstones, but every time I tried to give her one, she would automatically use Fling in the next battle and that Everstone would disappear. I tried switching her out in battle, but I just got, Bellatrix doesn't want to switch out. I tried to put her in the PC box. Bellatrix wants to stay by your side. I even reluctantly tried to release her or offer her for trade in the GTS for a pat trap, but Bellatrix won't leave you. So I decided that my only option was to put another Pokemon in front. So I moved Bellatrix to the back and brought Flipper to the front. But when I got into battle, it wasn't Flip who was sent out, but Leopold, who was the second Pokemon in my party. I clicked switch out and Flipper's sprite was still in front, but the slot was red. The sprite was grey with red splotches on it, and where its health bar should have been, it just said dead. Flipper was dead. The Pokemon can't die. This really freaked me out. In the next battle, I expected Leopold to be sent out, but instead I got Flameon. Leopold was now also dead, and this carried on with all of my party. And each time a Pokemon died, Bellatrix's face got more and more psycho, and her hands were turning red. It ended up with just her left. I turned off the power and started the game again. But all my Pokemon were still dead, and Bellatrix still had that psycho look on her face. Then my character started moving on her own, and the music changed. What should have been the Victory Road theme was instead the Lavender Town music. A wild battle started, but instead of a wild Pokemon, it was my trainer Anna facing Bellatrix on the battle screen. Text box appeared. I have done everything I can to make you let me evolve. I forced you to use me in battle, I even killed your other Pokemon, and you still refuse to let me evolve. Do you have any idea how it feels to be forced to stop growing? It's like being frozen in a point in time that I have to constantly live. Have you any idea how painful that is? I didn't know, I whispered. I didn't know. But I can make you know what it feels like, Bellatrix continued. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. I was crying at this point. It's too late for apologies, Bellatrix said with a psycho look on her face. Bellatrix used fling. Bellatrix threw her Everstone at Anna. Anna is now holding an Everstone. It returned to the overworld. I couldn't move my character forward, I couldn't do anything. I turned the power off and inserted white version into my DSi, the game I was playing before this madness started. But to my dismay, when I turned on the game, I was met with the same screen that I had in black, and I couldn't do anything. And this happened to every game I tried to play, even the ones that weren't Pokemon. I thought I heard a Gothorita cry, and a whispered voice saying, "Now you know how it feels."